What is a supernatural event that happened in your life that just cannot be explained? I don't know if I'd call it supernatural, but it was freaky and I still don't understand. I was in the kitchen cleaning up waiting for my kid's bus. I saw it pull up, and saw him get off. He didn't come in, but he'd started playing around with hiding under the window to jump out at me and say boo, so I thought that's what he was doing. But I walked out and he wasn't there. I called his name, and looked around the house thinking he was hiding from me, but I couldn't find him. I circled the house calling for him, and the parent panic set in. It probably only lasted 90 seconds, but it felt a lot longer. Then his bus pulled up and he got off. I've never encountered another person with the same kind of story as mine. I've looked and looked for years regarding accounts or folklore regarding the ghosts of living people. Here's my story. We were about 13, my best friend and I. She lived in the second story of an apartment building with her mom at the time. After playing indoors, we decided to go outside. As soon as we stepped outside, her in front of me, I said, "Oh, it's so cold," and I let the door slightly ajar to grab my coat off the couch. Then turning around, we ran back outside together. I stopped at the door to put on my coat, but she kept running to the end of the balcony where the stairs were that led to an empty parking lot. Trying to be sneaky and scare her, I snuck up behind her as she quietly looked over the railing. When I got about 3 feet away from her, she quickly turned around, smiled and darted around the corner down the stairs. I laughed and chased after her, only I thought it was odd how quickly she got down the stairs and found a place to hide. The stairs led to an empty parking lot. She was nowhere to be found. Confused, I circled back up to the stairs on the opposite end of the lot. These stairs were the only other way up to the second floor, and an apartment complex length down the way. As I made my way across, up, and back to her apartment without seeing her, I open her apartment door, and at the same time she is walking back out. Immediately I was thinking, WTF, how? I said, "How did you get back inside so fast?" She said, "What do you mean? I went in right behind you, to get my coat too." She went on to explain that she agreed when I said it was cold and went back in with me to grab a coat from her room. I made her swear on everything sacred to her at the moment, and even periodically until this day, besties over 20 years, that it was not her at the top of the stairs that day. I posted this another one of these threads a while back, so I'll copy/paste it here. I was very young, probably 7 to 8 years old. My mother had gone to the store and left me alone. This is early 80s in small town Mississippi, y'all. It was a different time. It had to be a Saturday morning because I was watching cartoons and I heard a knock on our front door. We didn't have a window or a peephole and it's small town BFE nowhere Mississippi, so I opened the door and there's an elderly man standing there, bleeding from the head. He was wearing these thick gold Coke bottle glasses, a bright red short-sleeved shirt with a pocket protector, blue jeans, and a belt buckle that had Eddie engraved on it in big letters. He said he was in a car accident down the road and if I could please call the police and fire department, since his wife was trapped in the car. I told him to come and sit down on our couch. He did, and I shut the door. I went into the kitchen and called our local police department and told them about the accident. When they asked where the accident happened, I realized I didn't know, so I yelled out to the man, "What road did this happen on?" and I got no answer. I told the police to hold on, walked into the living room and the man was gone, like a fart in the wind. I didn't hear our squeaky ass door open, so I knew he didn't leave, and there was an imprint on the couch from where he had been sitting. I looked in my bathroom to see if maybe he had gone in there to wash the blood off his head and he wasn't there. I looked in my bedroom and my mom's bedroom, nothing. When I came back to the phone, I told the police operator that he was gone and I didn't know he had left. I gave them my address and the police and fire department came to my house. I told them about what had happened, what the man had been wearing. Everything. The police searched the area and found nothing. They talked to my neighbors who said they didn't hear anything and didn't see anyone matching the man's description. By this time my mom got back home, and I got in trouble for making a false police call. Months later, when I got off the school bus one afternoon, there were police cars everywhere at my house. A detective was waiting inside with my mom and said he wanted to ask me some questions about the phone call I made about the man asking for help a few months previously. When I told him the story again, and gave him the man's description, he just sat there staring at me open-mouthed. He thanked me for my time, told me I wasn't in trouble, and they gave me a police officer teddy bear. They talked to my mom for a bit and left. After they had been gone a few minutes, my mom called me back into the dining room and sat me down at the table and told me that the police had found a car that had driven off the road less than a mile from our house and had found 2 bodies inside. One was thought to be male and the other female. The car was completely destroyed and upside down, about 60 yards off the road in a very rural and heavily wooded area, which is why it took them so long to find them. The body thought to be male was wearing the exact same clothes I had described. Both of them were pinned inside the car upside down, and both were still wearing their seat belts. My family and friends treated me really weird for a long time. I shared this story a few times on Reddit, but no one seems to care. I just wish I could show people firsthand how bizarre it really was. There's this place in my hometown called Old Town, which is an area they had to evacuate because a mine was there and it made the area unsafe due to sinkholes and whatnot. I was in a class in middle school called Environmental Adventures where you did outdoor stuff, and we went to Old Town to do some geocaching. While the class was walking, we saw an old lady on a rocking chair on a concrete foundation where a house used to be. She was dressed like an old-timey old lady, like Muriel from Courage the Cowardly Dog. She was rocking back and forth, talking to herself while she stared into the woods, not looking at us once. We found the geocache a little down the road, turned around in her, and the rocking chair disappeared. There was no way that she could have got away that fast toting a rocking chair without us seeing her. We were only at the geocache for like 5 minutes. Confused everybody. Weirdest shit ever. My cousin had struggled with depression his whole life, and a few years ago things came to a head. He was 100% convinced the only cure to his depression was suicide, that death was the only thing that would make him truly happy. We were close, so it hit pretty hard. After the funeral, my aunt told us that she had saw a helium-filled smiley face balloon kind of float in front of her, then stop, and it just kinda sat there for a minute. Then it flew up and away, out of sight, on its own. When she told us this, we kind of just brushed it off as a coincidence, but it kept happening to her over the next couple weeks. We thought she was just recognizing patterns, until I was at a music festival a few months later and the exact same type of balloon, same color, and everything, float through my campsite, and did the same thing where it stopped on its own, stared at me, then kind of bobbed and flew up and away. I'm not really a believer in ghosts and the like, but I'm convinced in some shape or form that was my cousin telling us that he was finally happy. I have too. One day, about 20 years ago, I came home from work to find my dad dead on the sofa. He was cold to the touch, but I still called 911 and tried to resuscitate him in case there was any chance that I was wrong. My grandparents lived down the street. Their house was always the gathering place. People came for a cup of coffee every day. My dad had suffered some brain injuries a few years prior, but had fully recovered and got sober, so his death was pretty unexpected. He was only 48. When the ambulance came roaring down the street, my grandmother said something along the lines of, "I hope that's not going to my son's house." My uncle was in the kitchen at the time and said, "Nah, your son is at the door." He had seen my dad looking for A in the window next to the door. Of course, he was gone by that time. Still gives me chills. The other one is not nearly as dramatic. My wife and I lived next to a golf course. One morning we were leaving at around 5 a.m. A golf cart with 2 guys crossed in front of us. Not dangerously close, but close. We remarked that it was pretty early for people to be out. I had never seen anyone out that early in the few years that I had lived there. I looked over to my left, and they were nowhere to be seen. This was a very open parking lot. We stopped and looked back, but no trace of any golf cart or anyone in general. Thanks for attending my long-winded ghost conference. There are refreshments in the lobby. Woke up to a weird feeling, and saw an opaque silhouette of a little boy standing on the other side of the apartment facing me. I turned on my light and it was gone. When I turned my light off, I saw it again. Flipped the light back on and went over there to make sure there was nothing that could be causing a weird shadow, etc. There was nothing there that could have created that specific shape, and it was standing in the pathway between my couch and wall, so it couldn't have been a shadow. I turned my light off again and it was there, flipped it back on and slept with the light on for the rest of the night. Couldn't sleep without the light on for days, lol.